This right here is revolutionary. Ah, the Switch. Who would have thought that this overgrown tablet is on mark to become the best-selling console of all time? At a time when Nintendo's home consoles were on a steady decline, no less. And all of that changed in 1 year, being 2017. The year when Nintendo went from being a complete joke to back to the forefront of gaming like they used to be 30 years ago. And I think people really discredit how perfectly planned this year was, with every month playing a significant role in the Switch's success. So this is the glass half full, and this is why 2017 will go down as Nintendo's greatest year of all time. I feel like mentioning how bad the Wii U did is so stale at this point. I mean, the concept was bad, they targeted the wrong demographic, the marketing was off. Holy shit, I'm doing it right now, aren't I? But after the Wii U's final hurrah with colored paper, it was actually pretty good. Nintendo finally unveiled the elusive NX that was rumored since, holy shit, since mid-2015. It's kind of sad that barely 3 years into the Wii U's lifespan, they already ditched it. And when the trailer hit YouTube, people were somewhat impressed. Like, it was different, but just brought up so many questions that were never usually brought up during console announcements, even for Nintendo standards. But other than an announcement for a full presentation come January 13th, we didn't really get any more Switch-related news until the next year. Oh, except for Jimmy Fallon. Yeah, this was really odd in retrospect. Like, we've never seen any gaming company or Nintendo do this type of thing before. My theory is that Nintendo saw all the criticism about their marketing in the past and said, you know what people love? Shitty talk shows. So let's let Jimmy look like he's enjoying the Switch and we'll sell millions. Which, sure, maybe it did work. But like, imagine for a moment that Bill Gates got on the Joe Rogan podcast to debut the Xbox fridge. Yeah, that's basically the same thing. Sure, I don't watch podcasts or talk shows, so maybe I sound like a dumbass right now. The point is, Nintendo was doing a lot of weird shit, and this was the first of many. Being the biggest Nintendo fan since I was born, I can admit that this is probably the most important and most crucial direct I can remember. Like this right here is gonna define Nintendo's standpoint in the gaming industry for the next 5 years. The date is so important that I celebrate its birthday every year. Like, really think about it. It's not some normal Nintendo Direct since we're getting brand new information on a mainline console. But I consider it even bigger than other console info dumps because we were a good 50 days away from launch, and we knew jack shit about the Switch. It's not like they're gonna show out the specs and be done with it. So here's the big question. Did Nintendo deliver? Well, it's complicated. The big questions were answered, like we got the price of it, and the surprising early launch in March. They even announced their first attempt at a paid online service, which, yeah, sure, why not? I doubt anything can go wrong. Alright, I'm gonna stop right there. The service is so bad, there's no point in even joking about it. But yeah, everything felt pretty solid. I feel as though they may have spent too much time on the HD Rumble. But other than that, it was a very nice mix of gimmicky games, third-party support, and really good reveals. And apparently, all of these were slated for 2017, which had me pretty skeptical to say the least. Rounding off the presentation with the not so surprising but super cool reveal of the release date for Breath of the Wild. Now remember, I said the presentation was a bit complicated at first. I think it was all the focus on the HD Rumble and no sign of other IPs like Metroid, Donkey Kong, or Pikmin. And there's also the fact that the Switch only had 2 launch titles. This was very concerning. Console launches at minimum usually have 3 pretty massive launch titles, and aside from 1-2 Switch, which was probably made in a good 10 minutes, and the absolute system seller we know as Snipperclips, it's hard to see why Nintendo wouldn't just wait it out till the holidays to release it with more launch titles. So it's an extremely risky move, and only time will tell to see if it'll pay off, or Nintendo will shoot themselves in the foot. February was a whole lot of nothing games-wise, but there's one thing I want to mention in particular. And that one thing was their Super Bowl commercial and how much they fucking nailed it. Nintendo and advertising don't work well together. Like, I cannot understate how much this
Popcorn, that's a deal!
hurt their brand. Like, these commercials are actively telling you, hey, only buy this if you're a kid. No adults, no teenagers, no, you have to be a kid. Like, sure, this could have worked in the 80s or 90s, but Nintendo is slow and don't understand that most of their fans aren't even kids, they're like 20-something-year-olds, and most kids don't even like Nintendo in the first place. And their marketing team finally realized that and said, hey, we make games for everyone, not just one specific audience. And this commercial and their first reveal trailer are perfect examples of that. It's sad that it took them till 2017 to realize that, but it's better late than never. Especially during the Super Bowl. I'm surprised Nintendo even knows the Super Bowl exists in the first place. So this happened. The Switch was finally released to mostly positive reception. Sure, the Joy-Cons were small and the dock had its fair share of problems, but the Switch basically being just a tablet was such a novel idea that most people overlooked everything else. And Zelda was a huge contributor as well. It's almost if Nintendo said, God, what do we do about this whole no games at launch situation? I got it. What if we take the only good Wii U game and delay it by 5 years? You are a goddamn genius. So it's such a huge game that looks and runs beautifully on what's essentially, again, a tablet barely bigger than my phone, said a lot. Oh, you can also play a huge open world game while you're taking a shit, so I would say it's a huge plus. So yeah, pretty solid starting month. But is it enough until Mario Kart 8 Deluxe comes out? Yeah, I guess it was. Look, Breath of the Wild is a really long game. At least for me, I didn't finish until like May. So at least it was able to keep my interest for a long time. So April was pretty significant because we got our first ever Direct during the Switch era. And although we didn't get anything new, we did get this new headline style for these Directs. And although it wasn't perfect, I just like the snappiness of it and how we're constantly moving on instead of dwelling on some JRPG for too long. And of course, later that month, we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And it sure was Mario Kart 8 with an actual battle mode. It's still crazy to me how a port of a Wii U game is the best-selling Switch game, and only 5, technically 8 years after it was released, we're now getting DLC. Better late than never, I guess? Yeah, so May was a bit dry games-wise. The only thing of real significance was Street Fighter 2. The 19th Street Fighter 2, might I say. Which was a nice fighting game before the other fighting game inevitably came out. But shockingly, the big game everyone was talking about was ARMS, because it had a whole Direct dedicated to it before its release next month. Again, this is shocking because Nintendo doesn't make new IPs that often. Their last one was Splatoon in 2015, and before that was Pikmin in 2001. So the fact that Nintendo was putting a lot of stock into these franchises was pretty unusual for them, honestly. So it was insane to see how ARMS went from a gimmicky showcase to perhaps the next big Nintendo IP. It was shown to have depth, lore, and an actual story, and plus a very eccentric cast of characters. You know, June's a great month. School just ended, summer begins, and we get to be disappointed every year. And speaking of disappointment, ARMS came out. And it really did come out. On a serious note, it kinda sucks how ARMS didn't live up to the potential we hoped it would. Did we just overhype it? Well, I would say yes, but it seemed like it had everything going for it. Except the actual gameplay, which I would say is the most important part. Well, ARMS was a bust, but we still had E3. Now this was huge. Nintendo didn't really have a showing in 2016, and 2015 was pretty disappointing as well. Meaning, obviously, they were going all out for this one. A huge blowout compared to the rest of the competition. If the January Direct was an appetizer, this is the main course. Get ready for the greatest, longest Nintendo E3 ever. Why is this 20 minutes long? Yeah, finding that out was kind of disappointing, but to be fair, Nintendo did a lot with those 20 minutes. There were a lot of good showcases like Kirby, Yoshi, and Rocket League. But come on, there's only 2 I really need to mention. Like how there is no gameplay, release date, god, not even a fucking image of Samus, but the number 4 was the biggest talk of E3. I think this shows how Nintendo knew how much of a gaming icon Samus was. And instead of leaving it to die because of its poor sales, they're reviving it. It really shows Nintendo's mindset going to this new generation, and I was amped to see what other series that were thought to be dead be revived next. And we never got any more information since. Oh, and they also showed off Mario Odyssey. Now, it's a Mario game. We didn't need to see more gameplay to know that we were probably gonna buy it. Sure, I wanted to see more gameplay, but what could Nintendo possibly do to get me more excited? Well, I guess they could drop the greatest trailer of all time. And that's exactly what they did. Wow, everything about this trailer is amazing. The atmosphere, the graphics, the sheer bliss I have watching this trailer is unreal. I can make an entire video detailing how amazing this trailer is, but I think this clip of me dancing to the main theme is all I really need to show. I think this month showed how Nintendo really want to push out their games for everyone on the Switch. From online multiplayer games like ARMS or Rocket League, to a steady push for big single-player games like Mario or Metroid. Oh, and Rabbids. Splatoon 2 hit the shelves, and it brought a lot of good and bad things. First off, the game itself is really solid. Some people said it felt too similar to the first one, but to be fair, Splatoon 1 came out on a dead console, so not a lot of people were able to experience that hidden gem. Besides, the core gameplay of Splatoon is a fun and fairly new concept, as the first game only came out 2 years ago. But on the other hand, I feel around this time is when the Switch really starts to show its chinks in its armor. First, the online. Wow, Nintendo really butchered this. There was the unstable online, the sloppy setup, and the fact that you had to download an app on your phone in order for it to somewhat work. Has anyone even used this app before? And the fact that we're gonna have to pay for this eventually isn't a good look. And also, yeah, Joy-Cons were starting to drift. Sure, hardware issues happen all the time. Just look at the Xbox 360. But for something to be made out so cool and so goddamn expensive, it was disappointing, to say the least. But this was 2017, and we all thought it'd be fixed eventually. So for the sake of this video, we're gonna say it was a problem for later years, and not now. The biggest narrative going into the game for August was, why does this exist? And why does it look so good? And that's what it was. It was a weirdly good game. That deserves a lot more attention, honestly. Cause again, what the fuck? Now, there was another Nintendo Direct this month, which showed off a lot of new info on games we already knew about. But the main takeaway I took from this event was the abundance of third-party games. We already knew that Skyrim was coming to the Switch, but Doom, LA Noire, and Wolfenstein are good examples of third parties actually sticking to the Switch and not just living in the dust like every other Nintendo console in the past. Especially Doom, like that really caught me off guard because I was part of the notion that Nintendo would never sell emulated games not called Bayonetta on their consoles. But no, this just proves that the Switch has something for everyone. Especially so early on to the Switch's lifespan as well. It's almost like they knew the Switch is already a success. So despite September not really having any big releases, I would say it was a pretty impactful month as well. Not a lot of stuff happened in October, honestly. I mean, sure, Fire Emblem Warriors came out, and people like those hack and slash beat 'em up games, but personally, they're not for me. Oh, and I guess also this happened. This game came out in October? What can I possibly say about Mario Odyssey that hasn't been said before? The game's just fun and did a lot for the Switch. I mean, it's not just a Mario game, but a 3D one in the same vein of 64 and Sunshine. I remember seeing a ton of people who haven't played video games in years come back just for this game. And in the end, Nintendo made waiting almost 2 decades for the next big Mario game actually worth it. This month was dedicated to all the third parties. Like Skyrim finally came out after being advertised since the first time we saw the Switch actually. Which is kind of funny because out of the 6 games that were shown on the trailer, Skyrim, a port, was the last one to come out. However, I specifically wanted to bring up Skyrim because I feel as though this is when people really start to figure out what the Switch offers ahead of the competition. Portability. I know, crazy, right? Like, sure, games on the Switch are obviously gonna be less powerful, but if you had the option, would you rather play an amazing game but can only be played at home, or play that same game that looks a little less pretty, but anywhere you want at any time. So if you travel often or not at home, you can still play that game. Pick your poison. I think the biggest thing I took away from Xenoblade 2 was the fact that it came out in the first place. Like, it was inevitable, but I thought if there was one game that would get delayed, it would be this one. But no, Monolith actually delivered, and they signed off the Nintendo Switch's first year on the market. And now, all that's left is the Game Awards. Now, Nintendo can either be really involved with the Game Awards, or non-existent. And this was one of those existent years. Not only revealing a port of the first two Bayonetta games, but Bayonetta 3 as well. A series that was slated to die before Nintendo revived it. And I find it cool that they thought this was a big enough reveal for the Game Awards. More evidence that Nintendo was putting a lot of stock on these not so well-known gems for the Switch. By the end of the year, the Switch sold over 10 million units, which in comparison to the Wii U, only sold 13.5 million. So, safe to say the Switch's future is looking pretty bright. Oh, and also Breath of the Wild won Game of the Year. Let's go! So you may be asking yourself, why exactly did I tell you every single thing Nintendo did in 2017? Which is a pretty great question, because I myself asked that very same question, sleep deprived at 3 AM doing research for this video. And it's become going insane. But the other reason was to really pinpoint that Nintendo really did do everything to make sure the Switch was a success. There was a major AAA or third-party release almost every month. And when there wasn't a game release, there was a direct instead. Which, comparing to other gaming companies, hell, Nintendo themselves is pretty rare. Like, compare that to the amount of Nintendo droughts during the Wii U era, hell, even the Switch era. It's just crazy how on top of the game they were back then. There was also the huge factor of the release date. Like, March is a really weird month because it feels like the holidays just passed. And people were really confused as to why then. But the thing is, if it didn't release in March, who knows how well the Switch would have done? And might I mention the games and how they were always different. This is really important because for a while, and I don't know why, people considered every Nintendo game to be the same. Like how people said that every Nintendo game was a 2D platform. Like, come on, there's only New Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, Kirby, Yoshi, the other New Super Mario Bros. Oh, but there was Mario 3D World that also played like a 2D platform. Okay, maybe they had a point. But the Switch did a really good job of diversifying every game. Just to give you a quick rundown, we get an open world game to a top-notch kart racer to a fighting game to a shooter game to a turn-based strategy to a beat-em-up to one of the greatest 3D platformers of all time, and a JRPG. That covers like every genre. They even had the shitty casual game. And they all have their own time to breathe and not overshadow each other. The point is, and I'll say it again, the Switch has something for everyone, with the added bonus of portability. Can we also just appreciate how this year had no delays? Nintendo is no stranger to game delays. Hell, a bunch of games nowadays are being delayed like crazy. But I remember watching that January presentation and looking at all these new games and saying, wow, none of these are coming out this year. Because I was so used to seeing a game trailer, then seeing a release date, and then seeing it get pushed back over and over again. And I thought at the very least, this would happen to Odyssey and Xenoblade. But no, they actually delivered, and Odyssey actually came out before it was scheduled to release, and I find that kind of funny. And I feel like I have to mention how good the goddamn games were. Okay, sure, say what you want about ARMS, Mario Kart, and even Splatoon, but guess what? That doesn't matter. Those games are irrelevant. Okay, don't take out Mario Kart Deluxe. God, that game sells millions. Okay, don't take out Splatoon 2 as well. That has a huge fan base. But ARMS? Yeah, you can take out ARMS. Because at the end of the day, you still have Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild. Two games considered the pinnacle of their series, two Nintendo icons, and two Game of the Year contenders. And they both came out a mere 8 months apart. They were so essential and needed to come out in the first year of its life cycle. To set an example, by having two must-have system-defining games, one at the start of launch and one for the holiday season. Real talk for a second, I've been praising these games for a good 4 videos now, and trust me, I'll stop. but it was essential for me to bring them up in this video. But yeah, it's amazing how Nintendo played all their cards right this year. From the marketing, the trailers, and the games, and how they perfectly set up what's to come in the future is a great accomplishment. And now that the Switch is the best-selling home console Nintendo's ever had, I think it'll only age better with time. You know, I think a lot of people underestimate how a lot can change in 5 years. Take for example where I was 5 years ago. Man, I've been loving the Switch, but I can't help but feel like I'm getting too old for this type of thing. Like, I love video games now, but in the next 5 years, I gotta start looking for jobs, relationships, and overall just becoming more mature than the person I am now. Like, I love Nintendo, but I can't be in this phase forever. Wow, never mind, nothing fucking changes.